Meet the smartest guy in India. He never waits in line. Traffic jam? He takes the wrong side of the road. No parking? He'll be back in 2 minutes. Government office? He knows a guy. Paperwork? He knows another guy. Rules don't slow him down. They slow everyone else down. His parents call him practical. His friends call him smart. People admire him because somehow he always gets things done. And then there's this other guy. He waits for his turn. He stops at red lights. He parks where he's supposed to. He even refuses shortcuts. Everyone has pretty much the same advice for him. You're never gonna survive in India. And after watching the first guy succeed over and over again, it's hard to disagree. Until one day, the game changes. This main character of ours, who doesn't respect rules, tries to cut one more queue. But nobody lets him. He tries to use a contact, but nobody cares. He then one day tries to bend one more rule. But this time, the person in charge was watching. For the first time in his life, his greatest strength became his biggest problem. Because maybe he was never street smart to begin with. Maybe he was simply playing a game whose rules rewarded people for breaking the rules. And that's a terrifying thought. Because if a society gradually learns that honesty is expensive, then it also learns that patience is punished and shortcuts are rewarded. And this is how you get a crazy situation where people are not following rules because they're adapting. So how exactly did we become a society like that? A society that teaches millions of people that following rules and regulations is for fools. He bought his first motorcycle when he was 22. That was his most prized possession. His father, on the other hand, just had one request. Always wear your helmet. He nodded. And for the first few weeks he did. Then slowly, the helmet became annoying. It messed up his hair. The grocery store was only 2 minutes away. The gym was just around the corner. His friends didn't wear one either. And every single time he rode without it, nothing happened. Not once, not twice, not 100 times. Every successful shortcut quietly taught him the same lesson. Maybe the rule was never that important. Until one evening, it was. An accident that would have been survivable suddenly wasn't. The ride ended, but the consequences didn't. The writer G.K. Chesterton once wrote, "Do not remove a fence until you know why it was put up in the first place." That idea is known today as Chesterton's fence. Many rules seem inconvenient because we're only looking at the cost of following them. We rarely see the disaster they were designed to prevent. A helmet isn't just a gimmick. It's a lesson written in blood. People don't ignore rules because they enjoy danger. They ignore them because the world keeps rewarding them for doing so. The first time you ride without a helmet, nothing happens. The second time, nothing happens again. The 100th time too. And that's exactly how habits are formed. The problem with breaking rules is that success feels like proof. Every time we get away with it, our confidence grows stronger. And eventually, we stop seeing the rule as protection and start seeing it as an obstacle. And as you can see it clearly in your daily lives, it can quickly become a catastrophic mistake. Now, here's the question. If almost everyone knows that following rules makes society safer, why do so many people still ignore them? Well, the answer isn't that people suddenly become irresponsible the moment they step outside their homes. Human beings learn. And more importantly, human beings imitate. Long before we understand laws, we understand rewards. Imagine a child sitting on the back seat of his father's scooter. The traffic light turns red. His father looks both ways and keeps going. Nothing happens. Here the child doesn't just learn that red lights are optional. He also learns that rules are optional, especially if you can get away with it. A few years later, he watches someone cut a queue. Nobody objects. He watches someone pay a little extra to avoid paperwork. And it works. Again, and again, and again. Without realizing it, every small success teaches the same lesson, that the rules aren't the real rules. The real rules are whatever people can get away with. The philosopher Aristotle once said, "We are what we repeatedly do." Usually we hear this quote in the context of self-improvement, but it applies to societies just as much. A society is nothing more than a million habits repeated every single day. When honesty is repeatedly rewarded, honesty becomes normal. When patience is rewarded, patience becomes normal. But when cutting corners is rewarded, that becomes normal too. This is why simply telling people to have civic sense rarely changes anything. Behavior changes only when incentives change. Think about that. Why does someone throw garbage on the empty road but hesitate to do it inside a luxury mall? Why does someone ignore a queue in one place but stand quietly in another? Honestly, it's probably not because their values have changed completely overnight. It's because their expectations have changed. They expect different consequences. They expect different reactions from the people around them. And perhaps most importantly, they expect the rules to actually matter. Once people begin believing that everyone else will also follow the rules, following the rules no longer feels like a sacrifice. It feels fair. But when people believe that everyone else is looking for the next shortcut, following the rules start to feel like volunteering to lose. That is the trap. If you don't take the shortcut, someone else will. And once enough people believe that, breaking the rules is no longer an exception. It becomes the expectation. Every society teaches its people what behavior gets rewarded. But beneath all of these lies trust. The political scientist Francis Fukuyama wrote, "Trust is the expectation that arises within a community of regular, honest, and cooperative behavior based on commonly shared norms." Notice something. He doesn't define trust as an emotion. He defines it as an expectation. In other words, trust isn't believing that people are good. In fact, it's believing that people will probably play by the same rules as you. Imagine you're standing in a queue. You stay in line because you trust that everyone else will stay in line too. Now imagine you're paying taxes. You do it because you trust that the money won't simply disappear into someone's pockets. Imagine you're driving. You stop at a red light because you trust that the truck speeding towards the intersection will stop as well. Every functioning society runs on millions of tiny assumptions like these. The moment trust begins to break down, everything becomes more expensive. And not just more expensive, more stressful, more complicated. Businesses spend more money verifying contracts. Families rely more on personal connections than public institutions. People stop asking what is the right way and start asking, who do I know? Eventually, the shortcut becomes the system. People break the rules because following them begins to feel irrational. If everyone else is bribing, why should you be the only honest one? If everyone else is taking shortcuts, why should you be the only one paying the price? That is the vicious cycle. Distrust creates shortcuts. Shortcuts create even more distrust. And each generation inherits a society that trusts just a little less than the one before it. Most people watching this video probably don't think of themselves as rule breakers. They think of themselves as good people, responsible people, people who would never intentionally hurt someone else. And they're probably right. Because the problem isn't that we're bad people. The problem is that we've become incredibly good at making exceptions. It's just this once. It's only 5 minutes. Everybody does it. Nothing's gonna happen. Every exception sounds reasonable when viewed in isolation. One person jumps a queue, one person parks on the footpath, one person drives on the wrong side, one builder skips one inspection, and one official signs one document without checking it properly. Each decision feels too small to matter until you zoom out. The economist Thomas Schelling spent much of his career studying how countless individual choices can produce outcomes that nobody actually wanted. No single person intends to create chaos, yet chaos can emerge when everyone responds to the same stimulus in the same manner. That's exactly how low-trust societies evolve, through ordinary people making ordinary decisions, each one rational, each one understandable, each one seemingly harmless. And together, they transform the rules themselves. Eventually, something remarkable happens. People stop expecting honesty, they stop expecting fairness, they stop expecting accountability. Instead, they begin preparing for disappointment. They carry extra cash because they expect a bribe. They hesitate to lend their car to their friends because they know that there are going to be traffic violations. They call someone they know because they don't expect the process to work. That's what low trust looks like. Not constant conflict, but constant anticipation. The expectation that the rules won't protect you, so you better protect yourself. You see, trust doesn't disappear overnight. It slowly gets replaced by suspicion. And when suspicion becomes the default, every interaction becomes difficult. Every transaction becomes difficult. And every stranger becomes just a little less human. And without even realizing it, we start paying an invisible tax. The tax of distrust. But what if we've been asking the wrong question all along? Instead of asking, why don't people follow the rules, maybe we should be asking what kind of game rewards people for breaking its own rules. Because every society is a game. Not in the sense that it's fake, but in the sense that every society has its incentives, rewards. And those incentives shape how people behave. The investor Charlie Munger once said, "Show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome." If following the rules consistently gets you delayed, while breaking them gets you ahead, what kind of behavior do you think people will slowly learn? If waiting in line means missing your train, but cutting the queue gets you a seat, what lesson do you think the system has taught you? If paying a bribe gets your work done today, but honesty means coming back 10 more times, what exactly is being rewarded? Because human beings don't simply adapt to values, we adapt to incentives. That's true whether you're training a dog, running a business, or even raising a child. Imagine playing a game of Monopoly, but every time someone cheats, they earn more money. Every time someone lies, they avoid paying rent. Meanwhile, the one player who insists on playing honestly keeps losing. How long before everyone else starts cheating too? The game itself has taught them that cheating works. People copy success, not intentions, not speeches. Which means if a society repeatedly rewarded shortcuts, it shouldn't surprise us when shortcuts become the norm. And the frightening part is that nobody has consciously decided for this to happen. Eventually, the unwritten rules become stronger than the written ones. And when that happens, people don't ask, what does the law say? Instead, they ask, what can I get away with? A bridge is inaugurated. One certification is missing. A few inspections are skipped. Capacity limits are ignored. And for a while, nothing happens. People cross the bridge, children laugh and play, families take photographs, life goes on. And then one day, the bridge collapses. 141 people never make it home. That was a catastrophe. One ignored warning, one unchecked inspection, one overlooked regulation, then another and another, and then eventually the bill comes due. And that's the cruelest thing about breaking rules, because the rewards are immediate, and I wish I was exaggerating. And not just that, the consequences are delayed too. And delayed consequences are incredibly difficult for the human brain to learn from. The bridge didn't fail in a single afternoon. It failed over countless ordinary days when every single shortcut seemed harmless. That's why the real tragedy isn't the collapse itself. The real tragedy, in fact, is that the warning signs were there all along. But success had convinced everyone that the rules no longer mattered. And 141 people paid the price.